Hello everyone and welcome back. This is part 2 of my Skillet Backtracking episode, and we're not going to waste any time, we're just going to get right back on track. Anyway, we continue with the 6th album, Collide. Originally released in 2003, I actually wound up listening to the 2004 reissue, which changed the track order a little bit as well as added one more song. That's really the only differences. Collide is very much the album that began the band's concept, and took the sound that they had in Alien Youth and refined it to something much more coherent. Not that Alien Youth is bad because, as I mentioned, it's one of my favourite albums by them. But if Alien Youth is the album that moulded Skillet sound, then Collide is the album that sculpted it and defined it into what we know it as today. The title itself begins somewhat of a trending concept, at least with the album titles that follow, of all being one word but like relating to each other. Just pause this video for a second to go and look those up, unless you're crazy enough to be willing to watch me explain it. With that in mind, Collide is very good. It ditches the industrial elements that they previously had, whilst adding some really nice symphonic tinges here and there, with it all coming together and just sounding amazing. And it's more than worthy sequel to Alien Youth. Favourite songs, to me at least, include Saviour, the title track, Fingernails, and Perfection, and my favourite song and the last song on the album, Cycle Down. Give Collide a spin, you really won't regret it, it's really good. We then reached their 7th album. I almost said 8 because my thumb was, but no, 7th. Comatose, released in 2006. This album could possibly be their most popular, or at least the one that helped them to achieve more mainstream success, changing the electronic elements for a much more fitting symphonic sound, the one that I discovered on Collide but decided to continue for this one. I have a lot of bias towards this album. Before Rise and Unleashed, Comatose was the album that I'd heard the most out of, all thanks to a site called Last.fm. You know, back when the site was good, where the songs weren't mostly really crappy quality YouTube videos and before Spotify took it over. Yeah, that site. Well, I started really getting into Skillet and Christian rock in general in about 2010-2009, and as a byproduct of that, I wound up listening to more songs from Comatose than any of their other albums. Anyway, I've veered off way too many times in tangents. The album itself is a really good progression from Collide and features more guitar solos, which is always a good thing. I've always felt like Skillet's lead guitar work is very underrated. Rhythm guitar work as well, but lead guitar most of all. Couple that with the coupling lead vocals of Joe and Corey Cooper, always awesome, and you've got yourself a really solid Skillet album. Standout songs include Whispers in the Dark, Rebirthing, The Pelvic Closure and Looking for Angels, The Last Night, and possibly my favourite Skillet song ever in Better Than Drugs. If you like Collide, then you're probably going to like Comatose a hell of a lot more. Give it a shot. Trust me. Next up is their 8th album, released in 2009, called Awake, which is where I got my first taste of Skillet. In fact, I think that most people get the first taste of Skillet from this album, but I'm getting off track. This album is... I'm gonna be real with you, it's a little bit of a mess. Don't get me wrong, it's not bad. But there's just this feeling that it's not as good as it could have been. I could complain that there are way too many ballads and that there are just a couple more than I would enjoy, but that's not a bad thing. There aren't as many symphonic elements as I would like there to be, but that's not a bad thing. One major change, however, is that this album saw their debut of co-lead vocalist and new drummer Jen Ledger, who is from England. Yay! She's also not used consistently enough on the album, only singing in 2 songs, but she is a good addition to the band in both terms of vocalism and drumming. She's really good at drumming. Also, I personally find it to be kind of adorable, but that's super off topic. Awake feels more like kind of a step back from how good Comatose and Collide were. It's not a bad thing, but there's not really anything that pops it in my mind, except for the standout songs I'm about to list, because I script these videos, except for improvised songs like that. Standout songs include Awake and Alive, Hero, Monster, It's Not Me, It's You, and my favourite, which might just be Forgiven, which is argued as that's probably the least heavy of all the songs I just mentioned. Awake is worth a run through if you're up for it, but I won't blame you for skimming it over either. Sorry. Next up is their 9th album, released in 2013, Rise. It's a marked improvement over how lackluster Awake was. It's probably some of their more experimental stuff too, and the closest to telling a story that the band has ever gotten, with some of the songs ending with what sounds like news reports and phone calls of people just going through bad stuff like relationships. There's news reports about school shootings as well. This is all there. I just wish that there was more of that, since it's really only present in the first 3 or 4 songs of the album. There's equal parts usage of electronic and symphonic elements here, and John Cooper's vocals sound much better, even going back to some of the screaming he did during their earlier work, as well as Collide and some bits of Comatose. Speaking of the vocals, Jen Ledger lends her voice again and is much more evenly used on this album than she was on Awake, where she was only in 2 songs. Yeah. She's also used the right amount on Rise. Well, used just the right amount, which is a really good thing. Also, this album saw the debut of new lead guitarist Seth Morrison, who is pretty damn good. I just wish that his solo skills were more showed on Rise. I know that it was his first album with the band, but it would have been nice to hear more of him just like shredding like hell. Like I said about Skillet, their lead guitar work is extremely underrated, and they have the talent to pull it off, but they just never fully utilize it, I don't think. Standout songs include the title track, Sick of It, American Noise, Fire and Fury, and my favourite song in My Religion, which has some really nice jazz and soul elements that actually sound pretty good. Rise is worth a few runs, and it's a good few leaves in the band's overall wake. And at long last, we reached their 10th album release earlier this year, Unleashed. It's a good way to punctuate things for the band, I find. It's a great mishmash of all of their old styles, with the experimentation that they've showed in Rise taking further leaps and bounds. There are some symphonic sounding tracks and some more electronic industrial ones, with some songs having just a slight tinge here and there to keep things interesting. Much like the balance that they struck on Rise with Jen Ledger's vocals, that balance has been perfected like a gymnast's equilibrium. You didn't really think that I could come up with a good analogy like that. And to think John and Corey are in their 40s now, and they can still rock it like nobody's business, that is just mental. Unleashed breathes a new life into the band and proves that they still got it. Seth Morrison feels more like a part of the band, and now when his guitar work has stepped up, my only issue is, as with most Skillet albums, it would be nice to have more guitar solos, especially considering how good Seth is. He's good, as with those before him. I feel like he needs more chances to shine. Jan's drumming is still good, the production sounds way better, especially considering that they brought back Brian Howes, who helped them with Comatose, and alongside Kevin Shoko, who is one of the best producers in the world today, the band just sounds way, way better. Standout songs include Feel Invincible, Lions, Out of Hell, Back from the Dead, and my favourite song in the closing track, The Resistance. Everything that they've ever done before has stepped up fantastically on Unleashed, and it just shows that the band still has some life left in them yet. Maybe even more than just some. Give the album a few goes, and then a few more if you like it. I know that I did. It's a really good album. So, that's it. This episode is finally over. Woo. Jokes aside, I'd like to thank CJ for suggesting this one to me. I hope that you enjoyed the episode. And I hope you, well, the two-parter anyway. Because, yeah, you gave my video yesterday a like. I hope you do the same for this one. And I hope that all the rest of the people who are not CJ also enjoyed it. Obviously, we talk about which I liked and liked the least. So my least favourite album was probably Awake. It just felt kind of like a step down after what is my favourite Skillet album, Comatose, which is very, very closely followed by Alien Youth. It's a high toss-up between those two, but Comatose is just much more better and more memorable and just a bit more polished. I really like Alien Youth though, it's damn good. Anyway, that's it for this episode. I'll see you all in the season finale at some point in December, which is going to be Korn, and obviously it's going to be two-parter because they've got 10 freaking albums out. I will see you all then. Thank you very, very much for listening, and take care of yourselves and each other. Jerry Springer, 2016. Is he still on in 2016? I don't know. I'm rambling. Bye.